All right. Hey, everyone. Good to see you today on this Monday right before the holiday. So I hope all of you are planning on taking a little bit of a break because it's always good to take a little bit of a break. Um, all right. So let's just jump into it here. I've got a question from Kimberly Vincent, who I talk to quite often. Hey, Kim. Uh, how can I reach more prospects in a quicker time frame? Serene Workforce offers virtual care information, webinars, and on-site massage therapy for large companies in Canada. We solve problems related to employee stress and pain management for increased productivity and corporate bottom lines. I am the company at this point and want your opinion. How can I ramp up sales faster? What would you do in order to reach more prospects faster? So, Kim, you and I talk about this a lot, so some of this is probably going to be a review for you, but maybe it'll be helpful for somebody else. So, so a lot of times what we're talking about when it relates to Kim reaching out to prospects is the idea of volume of connectivity, right? So like she's talking about lead gen. She needs people to talk to and she needs people to talk back to her. So in my experience, the best way to handle that is you need to have a constant outreach going. Whether it's if you're calling people, if you're emailing people, if you're texting people, if you're going to networking events, if you're going to work through your referral network, like if there's people that know the people that you need to know, like that's kind of my preference. I guess one of the things that maybe Kim and I haven't talked about is the idea of one to many sales and one to many sources of leads, right? So like instead of just going one by one and calling people, I'd rather go one by one and call people who can call people on my behalf, right? So then basically you're kind of multiplying your effort. So I would kind of think in those terms, which I don't think we've done that much yet for Serene. We've really been thinking more onesie twosie, one on one kind of things. So yeah, I would ask that question. Where's the networks of people that where's the networks of people that we can really connect with, who are then going to be able to refer us and act as advocates or ambassadors for us? I'll leave that as an open question. All right, next question. Rosalie Akololike. Sorry, that was a terrible pronunciation of your last name. Rosalie, I know you. Sorry about that. What factors should I consider when creating an exit strategy for my business? I would like to structure my business to operate without me so that I have the option to sell. All right, cool. That's how everyone should be thinking. You're thinking ahead of everybody else. We all get sometimes very focused on starting our businesses and running our businesses, but the exit is nowhere in mind. And frankly, the exit should be on the forefront of everyone's mind all the time, because it actually, if you structure a business that's sellable, you've also structured a business you want to own. There's a great writer. His name is John. What's his last name? It starts with a W. But the book I'm thinking of is Built to Sell. And that's his entire concept, that you should build your business in prep for sale. So what are the factors that you should be aware of? Well, standard operating procedures. If you're going to have the business run by itself, you need to make sure that you write everything down, that there's no passing information just by verbal communication when somebody asks. Like there should be a system and a process built to run your entire business. I'm very much a systems person, and if I go look at a business to buy and I see that it's doing a lot of revenue, but everything is very much like passed down through the ages, that's how we communicate how we do things, that I see as a major detractor in the value of the business and gives me an opportunity to kind of do a value add because I can see that can be improved on. So I would be very much focused on building systems and processes immediately, even at the early stages. A lot of times when you have 1 employee, 2 employees, 5 employees, you can get away with just kind of doing it a little more loosey-goosey, improvising a little bit as you go, and that's okay because sometimes you're trying to figure stuff out. But when you do kind of figure it out, don't forget to go back and write it down and then tighten it up at that point too. You can't be in that improvised everyone kind of remembering everything forever. even though I guess you could be, but if you want to add value to your company, you definitely want to write things down. And then I would say margins. When you think of selling your business, it's going to come down to how much is the person who's putting the money in going to get from a return on investment. You have to remember, when people are investing, they can invest in anything. They can invest in stocks and bonds, they can invest in real estate, they can invest in your business, they can invest anywhere, right? And so if your business is substantially more risky and more difficult to run and all these other things, then the return on investment that they're going to want is going to be much greater than if they were in any of those other investments. So meaning, like, they probably are going to want, if your business is a real risk and very difficult to run, they're going to want a 50% return on their investment to compensate for that risk and all that effort that might have to go into it. 50%, 80%, 100% return on investment, right? Depending. So the best way to lower their expectations of their return, and this is a bond math thing for any of you guys who aren't familiar with how bonds are priced, you want your business to be so attractive that you will have so many people wanting to invest in it that the return they're willing to accept goes down, which means your price went up. So think about that for a second from a math perspective, right? If you're getting a 10% return on $1,000, but now somebody's willing to pay you $1,200 for that same 10% return, well, your price is, like, they're willing. It's not the 10% because it would change. Your 10% return at 100 is 10%, so it's $100. But if they're willing to pay you $1,200 for that $100, now I believe, if my math is right, it's 112, right? Is like 8%, right? So they're willing to accept a lower percent return because they're paying you more for the same number of cash flow, right? So with that in mind, that's what you want people to do. You want people to be willing to pay more for the same amount of cash flow. And the way you get them to do that is by having a really tight business that's easy to run and is predictable and will most likely produce the cash flow that you're promising. Okay, Alex Lachinsky. What is the best approach to a very important client meeting where you only get one opportunity? Hello, mentors. I'm creating a SaaS business where our platform will help influencers and public people manage their digital assets in a way to help them with digital rights management and takedowns of pirated material. We help them store assets and manage the assets. I have a big meeting with a potential distributor, promoter of our platform to their customers. OnlyFans is the potential partner. When going into these meetings, what are strategies to build a relationship and secure them as a partner? Thanks. So I would say that you hit it right on the head, Alex. Going into the meeting. So I think you can do a lot of work before you go to the meeting. If you're, depending on, I don't know how you got the meeting, but in my experience, if you can meet with people in a way that is not salesy or not like, what do I want, what do you want kind of thing, like it creates more of an adversarial relationship. If there's a way to meet with them in a casual environment, that you're not sitting across a table from each other, that would be my recommendation. I've made a lot more progress with people in building relationships and building business relationships. I do a thing, and some of you probably already know this, but I don't want to, I do this thing specifically that I call a walk and talk. So when I want to meet with somebody, I don't say, hey, let's have a meeting. I say, hey, you seem like this seems cool. I think we should talk and just get to know each other more or whatever. Why don't we go on a walk and talk? And I started doing this a couple of years back, and it's been, frankly, a completely life-changing concept for me. And then some of my friends have started to do it as well. So I recommend for you guys all to do it as well, which is you really just walk and talk, and you don't schedule it like a regular meeting. There's a lot of details of how I'd like to do these, but long story short, you don't schedule it like a regular meeting. You just say, here's the start time, and we don't have a designated end time. So the person has to be willing to kind of make that little leap. And if you think about it from a business perspective, people are engaged immediately, because if they are willing to kind of take that time with you and to just kind of have the experience, they've already said yes in a way to creating this relationship. So that's and so you got to make it fun. Like, hey, let's go meet here, and then we're going to just walk around and we're going to talk, and we're going to talk about all sorts of things. We are not going to talk strictly from a business or objective perspective. We're going to talk from a meeting each other and understanding each other perspective. And then I would say if you can keep the topic of conversation in a walk and talk away from business, the more likely you are going to do business at some point in the future with these people. So, and whether it is that extreme where you're actually going on a walk and talk, or however you end up meeting, I think your best bet is to focus on relationship building and not on what you want or what they want or all that sort of stuff. So, like, focus on the people more than the what you're trying to accomplish. All right, next question. Kurt Nisapek. What's the best way to determine the best opportunity out of a selection of seemingly good options? I came to AO to begin working on building out different systems and processes to take my current branding and design business from being a contractor and take on the role of the creative director working with a team, as we've discussed on our call. However, as I've been going through the Authority Expert course, I've started questioning if that is what I really want to do long term. I initially got the entrepreneurial itch a little over 10 years ago when I started a clothing company. This idea behind this company was that I would use it as a motivational, inspirational platform primarily based on my journey of dealing with and overcoming challenges with mental health. The brand ultimately didn't progress because I hit a point where I became so afraid of sharing my story and so afraid of being judged that I got stuck in the analysis paralysis phase and never progressed. All that being said, I'm at a point in my life now where I've overcome those fears, and when I look at what I have written so far on my Authority Expert template, my strongest experience, greatest strengths, and skills that I've developed can all be directly tied to what I've learned in dealing with mental health issues. I guess I'm at a bit of a point where this idea has never left me, but the most immediate opportunities for myself are the area of brand design, creative direction. I know I want to pursue this brand because of the deeper meaning and personal experience I can speak from, but I also don't want to spread myself thin trying to develop multiple things at the same time. Yes, you are 100% correct. You do not want to be spread thin while trying to develop too many things. Focus is your friend in startup mode. Focus is your friend as an entrepreneur when you're trying to accomplish anything. You need to know what your highest and best use of your time is. So I guess with that in mind, I think you're on the right track in terms of focusing on what you're passionate about and where you've got where you've got some real domain experience and interest. You got to start there, right? Just like we all have to start from what we know and where we're at. So I think you're on the right track there. If you've got multiple business models as an option, I like to start with numbers. After I make the initial kind of decision, like I'm not going to say I'm going to start a business that I have know nothing about or have no connection to or like is totally out of left field. So once I get past that point, the very next thing I do is it really comes down to business modeling. Like, what am I selling? What are the margins? What does the market look like for that sort of thing? Like, how do I connect with that market? If I come up with the best idea in the world, but I have no way of connecting with that market, given my current connections or resources, then that also might dissuade me from going in that direction. So I think that's how I would decide. I would decide very much based on the numbers that I can get on a spreadsheet and kind of decide from data, I guess is a good way to say it. There's some soft things you're going to start with, but kind of when you get those soft things out of the way, they're like, yeah, here's the criteria. I would use numbers to decide the rest. And I'll just leave it at that. Okay, David Monge. I'm having difficulties tracking my KPIs. I Googled a few, but not having success. Any suggestions on where I can get started? I'm a mortgage broker and make sales calls to realtors, CPAs, attorneys, etc., and I need help keeping track of how many calls I need to make to lock in an appointment. Building a sales metric. What are things in my business I should be keeping track of to hold myself accountable and measure results? Okay, cool. Well, great. Sales activity is a really great and relatively easy one to track from like a KPI perspective. And it sounds like you're already on the right track. So I mean, if you're already making sales calls, you're calling to the one-to-many realtors, CPAs, attorneys. These are people who are going to refer you business, which is great. You're calling one-to-many instead of trying to call one-to-one. And as a mortgage broker, I don't know how else you would do one-to-one. So what I would do first is I would look at my category of referral sources now, my realtors, my CPAs, my attorneys, put them all into categories, look at your current group, and then measure how much in each of those categories you get in terms of, say, referrals per month or referrals per week or however you want to figure it out from each of those categories. And maybe you'll identify that one category is more valuable than another. Maybe you'll find that, well, I've got all these attorneys that say they're going to refer people and they never do, but my realtors are the best, so I'm going to go after them more seriously. Or maybe you'll say the realtors do a really good job, but the attorneys are really only like 20 or 30% than what the realtors send. So, and I can get access to attorneys much easier, right? So there might be a little thing that just because their one source is better than the others, if you can get the other one at a higher volume and more easily, maybe you make that choice. So I would really analyze who you're calling first, and then kind of understanding what groups, what categories are the ones that you consciously decide, yeah, these are the people I want to go after. And then the rest of it comes down to just like I was just saying, measuring, just keeping track of your calls. Like if I'm going to sit down and I'm going to call only attorneys today, and we're going to call 100 of them. And tomorrow I'm going to call only CPAs, and we're going to call 100 of them. And then we're going to call 100 realtors the next day. And then measure your results, right? Just make sure you're very detailed in what you count as success, right? Because there should be like a funnel type aspect to this. It's not just make the call, close the deal. There's going to probably be make the call, have a positive response, make a follow-up call, and then whatever you consider to be quote unquote closed in terms of a referral source. So like you have to know all those steps along the way and what you're trying to accomplish, what's your objective of each interaction with these people, and then so you can capture all that data. That's really going to be your KPIs, frankly. There's the how many calls, which is the easy one. The next one you're going to have to define, which is what do I count as success? When I call somebody, what counts as success? So I can mark that on my spreadsheet that says, yep, I called 100 and I had 10 success, whatever that means. And then what does closed look like, right? So like you kind of see the steps in the communication chain, so you can measure each one. And then you'll know what you're like, that you're actually doing well or not doing well on any given day, because you can compare it to every other day. And that also, by the way, makes it so now you can hire someone else to make those calls for you, because now you have a way of measuring, you have benchmarks for how much you did, and they're either doing better or worse than you did. So you can definitely work that out. You just have to be specific in what you count as a measurable point within that kind of continuum of communication as you communicate with people. Good question. Kyle Elder. When hiring, how do I determine if I should pay salary versus hourly? I have a small athletic training facility, working in previous gyms and hiring trainers at previous gyms. I've come to find it is tough to keep people who are good at what they do around long enough to build a team when they are getting a few hours here and there at the beginning. Would supplementing their pay with front desk, cleaning, etc. be the way to keep them at what are pros and cons to salary versus hourly structure? So the hourly versus salary structure in this context, I would say it's going to depend on where you want to take the risk, right? Do you want to take the risk that you can't keep an hourly person around because you can't give them enough work? The flip side of that is going to be is if you can't give them enough work to keep them around hourly, that means that you're going to be eating it if they were on salary, right? Because presumably, even if they're on salary, you're generating enough work for them that their hourly rate, if you divided their salary over the amount of jobs you give them, should be equal to or less than, theoretically, because if they're on salary, you're taking more risk, so you should ask for more return because they are on salary. You should be getting more output for them, right? So I guess my question for you would be, if you're putting them on salary to keep them, are you willing to maybe almost guaranteed to eat it for quite a while? Because if you're not going to eat it for quite a while, then you might as well just keep them hourly and do whatever you were going to do if it was you who was taking the risk on having enough activity. Does that make sense? Sometimes it's hard when you're just talking to yourself about these things and there's no one responding. Because you're just in a room talking to yourself and looking at a camera. So anyway, that's what I would think about. I would ask that question. One of the businesses that I invested in a few years back and that I owned for a little while was a gym. We had a 30,000 square foot gym. It had been around for like 30 years. And so there were some old school personal trainers there and like all these different things. So those guys were not on salary. They'd been around forever. They just stayed busy based on an hourly rate. And actually it was just based on it wasn't even, it was an hourly rate, but it was essentially a split of the commission, right? Like, or a split of the fee, whatever, the personal training fee in that case. And then we had some other people who taught group classes and everything, and they were paid by the class. So I don't think we had anybody on salary in that case, and that would be the reason that we didn't, because if we did have them on salary, we wouldn't have had enough, just because of the nature of the business. And it was a good business, don't get me wrong, but it just wouldn't have made sense, again, from a business model perspective. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But if you do put them on salary, make sure that you end up with more money in the end, not less, because you're taking more risks because you put them on salary. So you have to get them to drive more value for you. Because if you just have them around and you're just giving them all the money, what's the point? Okay, Shelly Merrill. What is the importance and how do I go about building a dashboard to track important numbers? Fire protection contractor. I have heard many successful business people say build a tracking dashboard to track key elements. My question is how? What is the best way to pull information from multiple databases? Is there software for that? Excel spreadsheets? Can it be automated or is it done manually? Curious to hear all your mentorial ideas. Great question, Shelly. So I mean, depending on when you're at this stage with your business, but when your business is large enough, at some point, it may be that large now, I'm not sure. If you can create a kind of unified, the best situation is that you have one single software system that runs your business, right? Like big enterprise, I think they call it ERP systems, enterprise resource planning systems that run across these big giant companies. The best big giant companies, because a lot of big giant companies have very screwed up systems because they do all these acquisitions and then they don't update their systems and nothing talks to each other, and then they kind of use people and labor to fill in the gaps. If you don't do that, but if you can create one unified system, that's the easiest way to see real-time data flowing through. That's usually a pretty big commitment and costs a lot of time and money. The next best thing is to be clear on what I would say 3 to 5. There's generally not more than that. I'd say 3 to 5 main numbers that you're going to be looking for that really drive the business. I would refer everyone back to also the theory of constraints by Goldratt. The theory of constraints is the thing that says there's one, basically bottleneck or roadblock in your whole business system. And if you manage that one thing, that's what allows you to increase your throughput. So your measurements, your key metrics, your dashboard that you're talking about, Shelley, would be the thing that is that bottleneck. Anything that influences that bottleneck or influences that thing, those are the numbers that you're going to want to pay attention to, because all the other numbers, although important, are less important than those things. So if you're talking like a CEO dashboard, it's going to be those 4 or 5 numbers, 3 numbers that tell you something meaningful about your constraint in your business. So I would say first, discover what your constraint is. Like, what's the one thing that if you turn the dial on this, everything else would just go up with it. If you and you can test that with kind of like a little, thought experiment. Well, let's say I had unlimited leads. What's going to break? Let's say I had unlimited, I don't know, product. What's going to break? And if you ask those questions, when you get to the one that you're kind of like, nothing else breaks. If I have unlimited of this thing, everything else just naturally can go up and it can easily be filled to rise to the level of whatever this thing is you just cranked up. Then that's probably your constraint, that thing. And then once you know what that is, then you start to ask, well, what numbers around that thing tell us if we have control over this? Like, what are the leading indicators of success of controlling this constraint? And remember, leading and lagging indicators, just as a review for everyone. A lagging indicator is your P&L at the end of the month because that's already happened. It's a snapshot of the past. A leading indicator of success would be how many cold calls you made, for example, right? Because if I know what my conversion rates are on my cold calls, if I just made more cold calls, I can tell in advance of what my sales are going to be because I actually did the activity that influenced the result. So leading indicators, 3 or 5 of them around your constraint would be the thing to focus your attention on. Joshua Grant, what data should I be tracking weekly? I've seen on the AO mobile app, Sean asked if we are tracking data. What kind of data should I be tracking? I'm in the welding and fabrication business. Right now I keep up with all my material expenses, labor costs, and overhead costs. This is a similar question. Actually very similar. I would say, again, focus on your constraint. Find the things that are going to be it's not quite the same. But focus on the things that are going to hold up the business if they are not at some particular number. Right? Those are going to be the metrics you want. If this number drops below this point, or if this number goes above this point, that's either good or bad. That's kind of how you conceptually have to think about what numbers you have to look at. You're in the fabrication business, so like maybe it's work in process days, right? Maybe that's the measurement, right? That's actually probably a good one. If you're in fabrication and it's taking you 15 days to complete a product from end to end, well, what happens if you reduce that to 12 days? Well, guess what? If you reduce it to 12 days, you're more profitable on that particular product. Your cash flow is going to improve. And presumably you have more capacity to do more stuff, so you need less people and less things, right? So reducing your work in process days might be something you'd want to keep track of. If it starts to stretch out, you'll know that your efficiency is going bad, or you'll know, or you can dig into it and you can say, well, it's stretching out because we can't get supply of materials, whatever. Like that might be a good one for you. Another one that you might want to keep track of is maybe receivables days. Yours is going to be all around efficiency, probably, on how receivables, like how quickly you're collecting receivables. Are things getting stretched out? Same thing. You need to know that. A lot of times, if you're dealing with customers and you're carrying receivables, they'll stretch out their payables on their side, which is your receivables, to increase their cash flow. But they do that, and then that decreases yours, right? So they kind of hold on to their money longer, and then which means you don't have it. So you're going to see your money in your account go down. So kind of keeping track of those sorts of things are going to be super important. Jenny Dawson, how do I plan to be sure to not fall into the trap of having a full-time job within my business long term? Today marks 1 month as a full-time entrepreneur focused on growing my yin yoga and sound healing business. Woohoo! I've been developing Zen Soul Balance as a side project since 2017, and now I'm ready to level up. Currently, I'm running the business solo and have 2 contractors that I use for assistance when necessary. I am establishing new strategic partnerships with a variety of businesses and organizations. As a niche yoga teacher specializing in yin and sound meditation, it is important that I, Jenny Dawson, as the teacher, lays the foundation of these programs within each of the organization, while simultaneously building the community and growing class attendance. There are corporate wellness facilities, hotels, yoga studios that I'm partnering with in the initial phase of growth. Another important task in this phase of my entrepreneurial journey is to book enough business to pay my bills. And gratefully, I have succeeded in filling up my calendar with new work for first quarter 2022. The challenge I foresee is that I will be spending long hours executing classes and working in my business instead of on my business. And I do not want to fall into the trap of having a full-time job within my business long term. I hope to soon have enough time to also grow business via my Shopify store and Vimeo video library for online yoga classes and props and instruments for sale. How do I plan ahead for hiring, financial, and time management to ensure there is enough time to grow my business and I don't get stuck creating a full-time job that requires me to be present for every class? I am actively talking with other yoga teachers who have attended my trainings. I am planning to recruit them to help as business grows. However, I do not have enough work to employ them at this time. So how do you suggest recruiting teachers on standby? What suggestions do you have for me as I'm in the development phase, but also thinking ahead for expansion of my business? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you all. You rock. Hey, awesome, Jane. All right, here's the thing. This is a great concern and should be a concern for a lot of different entrepreneurial folks who are starting up their business. And what I would say is you are thinking exactly right. You don't want to go down the path of where you're doing everything. So I would say as soon as possible, this is actually, here's a trap for you specifically. Here's what people do. As a doer in the business, the person who's actually like doing the work, in your case, teaching the classes, you will now build a business around yourself. And before you know it, you're happy you've got enough cash flow to pay your bills, as you say. But then you have to make a choice, because you can either continue to have the business built around yourself or, again, not be able to pay your bills, because you're going to have to give away half your money, let's say, to the new yoga teacher who's going to take all those classes for you. So maybe my recommendation would be, as early as possible, don't just like kind of skip over that step, right? Skip over the step of building taking all the classes like now, just because you can get to paying your bills quicker, because then you just end up back in that same boat again. Now you're working in the business and you can't afford to hire anyone else because you're already paying all your bills. So I would say it'll take you a little bit longer to getting to pay your bills if you do it the way I'm saying, but at least you don't have to address it twice. You could just address it once, which is in this first phase. So I would say bring on 2 or 3 other folks who can help take some of the classes so you can start to build them up, and focus your attention immediately on building them up, not yourself. And of course you have to maintain quality and make sure they're doing it your way and all that. So that's systems and processes again. But I would put a lot of focus, I know it's easy for you to do it yourself, and you'll get to being able to pay your bills faster, which will be really nice. But I guarantee you, just as somebody who's also gone through that sort of situation in different ways, that if you can skip over the having to be broke twice, that will be you'll be very happy about that. So yeah, and then as far as hiring people who you can't afford to pay full time, that's okay. There's a lot of people that work part time or do gig work in this type of business. So just find the right people. Split the bill with them. I don't know how much you're paying or whatever, but a lot of times in these sorts of deals, it's like a 50-50 split with the person who does the work and then versus the person who books the work and gets everything organized. So, start there and see if you can get a good team put together who are people who are willing to make a little extra money doing the thing that they love to do, and working with somebody like yourself who's going to create a great culture and a great environment for them to participate in. So, yeah, hope that was helpful. All right. Darby Scott. When you have a fleet of vehicles, should you aim to keep all vehicles out in the field every day or keep one as a backup in case maintenance is required? We have a fleet of mobile pet grooming vans. There are 3 out of 6 days in which all of our vans are on the road, and we're considering having all vans on the road all 6 days. We are closed on Sundays, which is the basic maintenance day for small things like oil changes and quick repairs for our mechanic. Bigger mechanical fixes require taking vans to a shop, which are always closed on Sundays. My concern is that if we never have a van off the road and something comes up that requires a week or more of repairs, which actually happens every quarter to at least 3 of our vans, we'll have to pull employees from their regular schedules, which will affect their pay and recurring client schedules. The domino effect would be that clients become upset because rescheduling is difficult with full schedules, and then we may lose their clients as well as employees who have had their schedules cut. I also understand that a vehicle not being used is a vehicle not bringing in money, but the former seems to be more harmful and more of a loss than the latter, in my opinion. I would love advice on this. Darby, you are 100% correct in my estimation. It sounds like, I mean, I don't know if you did the numbers or not, but my recommendation was going to be was, what are the numbers, right? Let's say, I'm just, again, off the top of my head, let's say it cost you $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month to have a van sit idle, right? Or that you're going to rotate the van so you always have one extra just sitting around, right? Let's assume that's the case. And you said 6 vans, right? You have 6 vans already. So if you have 6 vans, yes, no, I don't know how many you said you had here. 3 of our vans, I don't know, whatever, say it's 6, however many vans you have. Let's say it cost you $1,200 a month to have a van sit idle, and you have 6 total other vans that are already running around, right? Like they're out. You have 6 vans on the road, 1 sitting idle. You have 7 total vans. The van sitting idle costs you $1,200 a month to sit there and do nothing, or at least so we have this one van that's always down. So that's $1,200 that you're losing. So essentially, you bought yourself a $200 per van insurance policy on the other 6 vans that are driving around to make sure that they all have a backup for them. So it's costing you $200 more per month per van to let this guy sit there empty. So my question then would be, is the risk of a fully loaded schedule where you don't have a backup and you go down for a week worth more than $1,200? It sounds like that's your feeling, that it is. It sounds like from what you're alluding to there is that if a van goes down and it's down for a week, your loss is potentially worth more than $1,200 a month. So I would add all that up. If you're telling me that, I think you said once a quarter, which actually happens every quarter to at least 3 of our vans. So a quarter to at least 3 of your vans, that's 1 van a month. So your $1,200 insurance policy essentially is being called on once a month from what you're saying here. So for $1,200, it's a pretty straight calculation. When 1 van goes down, does it cost you more or less than $1,200? Or whatever it costs you to have the 1 van sit idle. If it costs you more than $1,200, do the deal, let the van sit there. If it costs less, then maybe you don't. Maybe you just deal with the pain in the butt of when a van goes down, you just got to reschedule everybody, piss some people off, blah, blah, blah. I would guess that it's going to cost you more to piss everybody off and have something down and have to reschedule everything. It might be worth that insurance policy of that 1 extra vehicle just sitting around. Yeah, let the numbers guide you, as I generally say about a lot of things. Ricardo Delgado. How do I start working more on the business versus in the business? When do I start backing off from the day-to-day and begin thinking more strategically? I'm building my barbershop, and it seems like I'm losing focus on building a team because I'm working 50 to 60 hours a week in the business. Should I hire someone to help me with all the small things? Yes, you should. It's a choice to work on the business or in the business. This is true of any business. It's true all the time. That if you are stuck in your business, you have put yourself there, and there is nothing holding you there other than your own fear of maybe not having enough money, because then you have to pay someone else to do it, or having to now lead someone else. So I would say yes, Yes, yes. You do need to hire somebody else to help you with things, because if you find yourself doing small things, as you say, um, then you are essentially working at whatever rate you would hire someone else to do those small things. So if you're doing a $10 task, you are now working for $10 an hour. If you are doing a $15 task, you are now working at $15 an hour. So if you can hire somebody to do those things for $10 and $15, let them do it, and then you can put your focus on these higher level $20 an hour, $50 an hour, $100 an hour type activities. Because if you're not doing the $100 activity in place, you're doing a $10 activity, you're always going to be stuck doing those little low things. There's another book that I have back here that I love called Time Really Is Money by Rob Slee. Time Really Is Money by Rob Slee. I would encourage you to read that, Ricardo, to read that. And I would encourage everybody else to read it, because it really does talk about how you can kind of keep elevating yourself up based on how you spend your time and how you figure out the value of each task that you're doing in your business. Okay, I guess that is it for now. I don't have anything else. As always, it's good to see everybody. Happy holidays in the next couple weeks here. And I will see you all in the new year. Have a good one.